So now it's time for Q&A session with the presenters, and thank you to everyone who's already submitted a question. If you have a specific question now, please use the questions tab on your webinar control panel to send it through to us. We've got quite a few questions through today, some of them pre-submitted and some have come through during the session this morning. So if you're both happy, we may make a start.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what practical steps should a cluster take to collectively address the megatrends, and can you talk about global best practice examples?
So I'll take this question. Thank you for this question. So this is a very interesting question. So yes, when you look into the megatrends research work, what you see is that it is structurally designed, right? It talks about what is happening now and what is it going to happen in next 10 to 20 years. So that gives a wide framework of, you can say how a macro thing is getting down to a micro thing and how it is impacting a particular business industry or even a particular company, or even it is impacting a particular individual's life. So in that case, what happens is that when you have this methodology, when you have this literature in hand, you can look through this macro to micro approach and you can use it in your strategic planning to understand how you can like how this particular macro trend is going to impact your industry. And when you know that, you can obviously leverage these trends. You can obviously go a little deeper, find the micro trends, and then you can apply them in your strategic decisions. And then you can it would be very easier for you to understand your business needs and then structure your goals accordingly. So yes, this is a very, you can say, this macro to micro approach of leveraging micro trends, of leveraging these mega trends would be an important approach, how you can leverage mega trends in your, for your business development. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And the next question is, what will it be the defining technological trend that will shape Northern Ireland's import and export?
So there are various technologies that can be used in the current day. For example, AI, IoT, and blockchain. But for going through the webinar that we have been discussing today and the topics that we have covered, quantum computing is something that can be very useful when it comes to trade, because it allows quantum computing is nothing but as compared to classical computing, it is more faster, and it gives a quick responsiveness towards whatever decisions that are supposed to be made on the spot. So basically, it'll when it comes to supply chain and logistics, quantum computing is something that can contribute a lot to the trade. And over classical computers, it is more high speed. So I believe that this is a technology that can be very relevant when it comes to trade, import, and export.
Yeah, I would like to add something. Quantum computing can also be used to improve the inventory management when it comes to import and export and trade management. So obviously, inventory management is an area which needs a lot of attention. So this particular technology, quantum computing technology, is definitely going to improve that area, that is the inventory management. How it is going to improve? It can enable, quick calculation of optimal stock levels based on the current market condition, and it can also enable this real-time decision-making capability of how the resources would be, how the weather condition would be, or what would be the demand, which time there would be a spike in demand. So all these kind of changes and all this kind of information can actually be gathered on real time through a computer, this quantum computing, and this is definitely going to improve the decision-making capability when it comes to trade management.
Oh, great, thank you very much for both of you for answering that question. We've got another question under the megatrend biotechnical intervention. The question is, what is the largest hurdle or bottleneck for the wide use of biotechnologies for food production and medical purpose? This will be in terms of legal, regulation issues and technical issues, etc.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for this question. So yeah, this is a very important part, I would say, when talking about the challenges. Like when you talk about technology advancement, you need to look into the possible challenges around it as well. So when it comes to the wide use of biotechnology, especially for food production and medical purposes, so one of the biggest hurdle that we kind of have identified through our research is definitely the strict regulations, like the lengthy approval processes for for these genetically modified organisms and other biotechnological innovations. This time taking approvals, the strict regulations, these definitely lead to a delay in implementation. One example that comes to my mind right now is of genetically modified rice, that is golden rice, which has the capability to produce a certain, you can say, a certain alternative of vitamin A, and it actually helps in combating the vitamin A deficiency, especially in the developing countries. So this particular genetically modified version of rice had to face prolonged regulatory hurdles before it was actually allowed to become commercial in countries like Philippines. And because of its the main reason being was the safety concern and the ethical concern associated with it. Similarly, there are certain gene therapies that we have seen in past which had to undergo a very extensive scrutiny by regulatory bodies like FDA and EMA before they actually get approval. One such example is Zolzema, which is used for treating certain genetic disorders and also some cancer, and it's also used for some cancer treatment. So yes, the strict regulations and this lengthy approval process is one hurdle. Second is that there are certain, you can say, necessary elements being tied up to when it comes to technologically modified foods. First is that you need to ensure the transparency and proper labeling of biotechnologically modified foods and medical products, so that there is so there is a trust among consumers, and consumer have a very informed kind of have the full information about what they are actually consuming. And then of course there is a huge cost associated with the R&D of these kind of products, which is usually very high. So that is something which needs to be understood before actually investing into these kind of biotechnically modified food. And coming to the second part of the question, that can we expect this kind of regulation to be or any kind of subsidy from the government? So yes, we do see some kind of ease of regulation and some kind of subsidies in form of tax incentives right now, but that is at a very regional perspective and at a very like it's not that widespread right now. But yes, in future we can see certain form of tax incentives from the government coming in, or there could be some grants or research funding also that could be available from the public entities. Yeah, we can expect some kind of government subsidy for these technologically modified food and medical products research and development.
Great, thank you very much for that answer. I think we have one more question. The question is there movement towards global standardization of calculation of environmental impact when a customer uses products regarding industrial equipment?
Okay, so global standardization, right? That's what. Can you just repeat it once?
Yes. Is there movement towards global standardization of calculation of environmental impact when customer uses products regarding industrial equipment?
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you for this question. So yeah, yes, we see a lot of global standards that are already being set for calculating the environmental impact, because when sustainability is at priority for many industries right now, so there are a lot of global standards that are already functional. So we see a lot of ISO standards that we say, like we see a typical mark being put on any product like ISO 14001, ISO 14067. So these are the you can say the global standards that are actually set for calculating the environmental impact. So I'll just name some of them which comes to my mind. So there is something like ISO 14001. So this is something which is an universal environmental management system, and it basically focuses on improvement of environmental performance of a particular product. Then there is ISO 50001, which is a standardized environmental framework, structured framework for organization to manage their energy efficiently. Now, the aim of this standard was to improve the energy performance of industries through, strategic or systematic energy management practices. Then we also have certain regulations like product carbon footprint. Yeah, which is also a metric which is used to quantify the total greenhouse gas emission. And then we also have certain guidelines from industrial entities like the Steel World Association, which provides very comprehensive guidelines in order to promote sustainability and sustainable best practices within the steel industry. Then we also have International Council on Mining and Metals. Now, this particular organization is again dedicated to enhance the sustainable development within the mining and metal industry. So yeah, these are some of the renowned, you can say guidelines and ISO standards that is coming to my mind right now. So all these movements are already in place, and they are actually impacting the environmental sustainability part of how customers are using products and how custom products being developed, and also how industries are actually looking into the sustainability aspect right now.
Great, thank you very much for that answer. So, okay, I think it's thank you to both our speakers for answering those questions. I think we have to conclude the session now. I hope you find it very beneficial to our audience and the businesses who are with us today. I'd very much like to thank both our speakers for presenting today and for being put on the spot for those questions. We tried to get through as many questions as we could. If you weren't able to answer your question today, we'll provide an answer by email to you shortly. To receive business updates, if you haven't already, please sign up to our email newsletter on nibusinessinfo.co.uk. So do please keep an eye on the BestNI website, where you can register for all forthcoming events and webinars. So that's it for today's session. I'd like to thank you for all attending today, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.